This is Autoline After Hours, unscripted, uncensored, unapproved. Are you a podcast kind of person? Then look for Autoline After Hours, wherever you go for your favorite podcast.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Hello there, Gary.
John, how are you?
I'm doing well. I can't wait for the show to get started. We got a bunch of questions from viewers as well, and we got a couple of great panelists joining us today.
We certainly do. Why don't we bring everyone in?
Okay, let's start with Mike Musto from Hemmings. Hello, Mike. Great having you back on the show.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Everything good?
Really good.
Absolutely.
Really
good to see you.
Chris Paukert from Edmonds. Great to have you back, Chris.
Thank you. Great to be here.
In a new role for you since we've seen you the last time?
New role, new place, all new.
And let's bring in our special guest for today, Tim Kuniskis, the head of Dodge. Tim,
hey,
so
everybody.
Awesome. I know how busy you are, so it's just brilliant that you were able to carve out some time for us.
No problem at all. I love talking about this stuff. Thanks for having me on.
Right. I mean, so let's throw it out there just to get the whole conversation going. I mean, when you guys pulled the wraps off that electric charger, it started the big debate or the big arguments. You know, will true hardcore gearheads with gasoline running through their veins really go electric? I know you get asked this question all the time. What's your answer?
You know, we had the same question, to be honest with you, when we started working on this quite a while ago now. And one of the things that we decided was very early on, we said we need to show this car to the public, more importantly to the enthusiasts, way in advance, because this is a massive change and they're going to need some soak time and they're going to need some real detailed information on exactly how we're going to go to market with this car, so that by the time the car comes out, it's going to just finally be here and not be all new, because there was no way we could wake up in 24 and launch this on our fans and say, hey, we're changing after 50 years of everything we told you was the greatest thing. Oh, this is better. Trust us. You can't do that.
So Tim, this is, speaking of going back in time, this is something that you said on September 1st of 2014. And I want you to expand on it, because I think this is still what you guys are all about. You said, at Dodge, we don't make category cars. We make category cars nervous. Dodge strives to turn everyday vehicles into personal statements. Our vehicles are modern performance cars that deliver that visceral feel that reminds buyers why they fell in love with driving in the first place. Is that still you?
Well, thank God, for having access to old clips and videos and things like that you can't run from, man. I feel like I'm running for office right now, pulling out old clips. But I can still stand behind everything that I said there, because it really drove the development of this car. Because we looked at everything that was going on in the electrification space, and there are huge advantages with electrification from a performance standpoint. And I also said that very early on. I said, look what's going on with the supercar space. You see the 918, you see the LaFerrari, you see them adding in electrification, you see the benefit of it. There is huge advantages there from a performance standpoint. But there's also disadvantages that you guys are all very, very well aware of, because you've driven the cars. But one of the things that I think is going to take a little bit of time, and again, it was that soak time, is we need these enthusiasts to experience these products. I'm not saying necessarily this product, but they need to experience the benefits of electrification for themselves. Because the first time you drive a full battery electric car, it really changes your brain and how you process performance. You drive a car. I love to get into a car and drive it, an electrified car, and then drive it and then try to guess what the power is, because we can generally get pretty close on an ICE powered car, right? You can't do it on electrification. You could drive a 300 horsepower BEV, walk out of it thinking it's 450 horsepower. I mean, the performance just is so much different. And people aren't factoring that into their equation. They're just looking at it as a commoditization of something that they've come to love. And so we said, we got to find a way to decommoditize it, to do exactly what that quote said back in the day, is to try and bring in some of that fun. And by the way, the things that we've done to try to bring the fun back in, they're not great ideas from a development cost standpoint or from an efficiency standpoint, but they're important for this buyer. And that's how you do it different than everybody else. We hope.
Tim, to your point, one of the things about electric cars is they tend to feel the same at 5 miles an hour that they do at 25 miles an hour in terms of, the NVH they give off and that sort of thing. And one of the key things about your performance cars has been the visceral nature. It's been the sound and frankly, it's been the vibration, the rocking on the motor mounts kind of thing. How do you intend to convey that sense of speed and occasion and, when you're just sitting still in an EV or trundling around town?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when we first started talking about this a long time ago, one of the things that we used to explain to people why we needed the money to make these investments, because from a pure engineering standpoint, you could never justify the investments in some of the things that we did. And one of the examples we gave was an amusement park. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but we said, everybody's been to an amusement park, and the ride that you get into that it goes all the way to the top and it just drops you like an elevator falling down. It's amazing. I mean, the acceleration, the G-force, it's outrageous, but it's very linear, right? As soon as it hits, okay, now what? That line for that ride is 20 minutes long. Then you go over to the roller coaster, it's probably not as fast. It probably doesn't have the G-forces, but it has the drama. It has the emotion, the twists, the turns, the drops, all of this stuff, right? And I said, those are the two differences. That one's the electric car. It's linear. It's smooth. It's super fast, has a big hit. But to your point, it becomes just a linear acceleration and you get numb to it. As fast as it is, you get numb to it. The muscle car is the roller coaster. The muscle car is the car you got into. And man, it felt a little dangerous. And that's why it was exciting. The rumble, the roar, the vibration that you talked about. When it shifted from first to second and your shoulders went back in the seat and the car went sideways, you went, oh boy, I got to be careful with this one. This is something to, really pay attention to. That's what we're trying to bring into the electrification space. Not going to make it more efficient, not going to make it better on range, not going to make it better from a cost standpoint, but we're hoping to make it a lot more fun.
In fact, that's almost introducing inefficiencies in the form of character, which I fully support in this case. Makes sense.
Yeah, we're absolutely doing that.
Mike, you're a muscle car guy. What do you think? Are they pulling this off? Can they?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to a guy that right now is getting a 900 horsepower 69 Daytona built, right? So I'm right in that vein where, I want that theater. I want that bravado. I want to be able to get in it, and I still want to have that little voice in the back of my head that just goes, be careful, Musto. Just watch it a little bit, because that's what a muscle car does, right? And I've been to the racetrack. I don't know how many times. I live right up by Sonoma. We go there all the time for the drifts and drags. Electric cars go up all the time, but they're 100% ignorable, right? A Lucid goes up, guy flat foots it, runs down the quarter. Everybody goes, ooh, because they look at the time, and then they turn around because it's vanished already. And there's nothing to remember about that car from a theater perspective. Then all of a sudden, the 70 Camaro comes up with the big fatties on the back, pulls a wheel stander, goes 60 foot, lays it down, and everybody's pinned against the wall going, oh my God, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. So to have the theater interjected into a muscle car is what I, as an enthusiast, want, because that's the conversion. That's how guys like me are going to look at this thing and go, this works for me. That plus the style. Right? It doesn't look like your average. It doesn't look like your average blob rolling down the street, right? You have this, you have lines from the, 68 Chargers in there. You've got some 99 Concepts. You've got some beautiful lines in this thing. And it had to happen. And Tim, you know this, like, if you all screwed this up, like, I'm a Dodge guy, I'd have been like, what, really? But for me to get excited about a car like this, about an EV, is great. Now I just want to drive it. I want to, that's what I want to do. I got to get behind the wheel and experience.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
So Tim, how are you adding this experience? How are you adding this drama?
Well, it was a couple things. We said from day one, we have a choice. When the whole industry transitions to electrification, I mean, it's not a choice. It's going to happen. I said when we revealed the car, the industry has invested $500 billion in electrification. There is no mulligan for $500 billion. This is coming. The product pipeline is coming in this direction. So we had a choice. We have the luxury of being in a company that has 14 brands, and we're in a showroom that has 5 brands. And people always say to me, "Oh, how can you be a brand that doesn't have a this or a that or a pickup truck or a full-size UV or whatever?" We do. It's got a different name on it, but it's the same company. It's in the same showroom. If you want a truck, we got Ram. If you want the best SUV, we got Jeep. We have all that. So we had a choice. When we were transitioning, we could have easily said as a company, I wouldn't, but we could have easily said as a company, look, Dodge can't make this leap. Dodge can't go there. Dodge is all about V8 muscle cars, raw emotion. It can't transition to electrification. We could have shut the brand down. It's happened with other brands, right? And everybody's been asking since we formed Stellantis, hey, you got 14 brands. Are you going to consolidate the brands? So we said very early on, we said the only way we can do this is if it looks like a Dodge, and we wanted always for, I don't even know how long, to do a 68, 69 Charger, the most iconic muscle car ever. We always wanted to do that. So we said, okay, we know what we want it to look like. I don't know if we can, but we know what we want it to look like. It's got to look like a Dodge, sound like a Dodge, so it can't be silent. It's got to drive like a Dodge. If we can accomplish those things, then we can actually make this leap. And quite frankly, we worked on it for a long time, and we were nervous. We weren't sure if we could do this. And the first domino that flipped for us was the style, because we were working towards this this iconic muscle car. And I'm going to make Mike mad right now, and he'll get over it. It'll be okay. Is we came to the conclusion, look, we know how to do this. We know how to make it slippery, because well over 80% of the power of the car at highway speeds is overcoming the wind resistance, right? That's why every electric car, I always jokingly say, it looks like a melted jelly bean. If you look at the silhouette of every car out there, they're very similar. They have to be, because they have to have very, very, very slippery aero. Otherwise, the battery's got to be enormous. And if the battery's enormous at 100, 120, whatever per kilowatt hour, the cost would be, exorbitant. So you need to be slippery. And we looked at that and we said, well, we can't do that. But you know what? We cracked this code 50 years ago. We had this super aerodynamic car, Musto's car, the Daytona, the nose cone, the wing, everything. That overcame the horsepower challenge back in the day to get over 200 miles an hour and have a very successful NASCAR program. But, and this is where he's going to get mad, we said, yeah, that's going to look ugly if we do that.
You're not pissing me off. Listen, it's a cartoon character.
It wasn't a beautiful car. It was a purposeful car. And it was a very successful car, but it wasn't a beautiful car. Now his is, but in general, it wasn't. So we said, okay, we know how to do this. We can put this nose cone on here and we can hit the aero numbers that we need. But that's kind of where we stalled. And then Ralph came out of the blue and really came up with the idea of the R-Wing, the Gary Romberg R-Wing, which was the guy who designed the nose cone on the original NASCAR. And he said, if we hide it, we can still make it look like that 68, 69 Charger and give you the aero. And that's when we got excited. That's when we said, oh man, okay, one down. If we got one down, we can figure out the rest. And then the momentum started building from there, because we had that almost false sense of confidence. Like, okay, we got this, hold my beer, watch this. We're going to do the rest of this. And so Ralph really was the guy that got us going on the rest of it. And then we knew there was 2 speeds out there. We knew we could do the 2 speeds. We knew we could do a 2-speed different than anyone had ever done it before. And we knew that we could do an exhaust, although most people didn't believe that we could do an exhaust. A lot of people wanted to just do, some simulated audio into the car through speakers. But, we have a saying on our team, we call it the last tenth. And everybody thinks when I say the last tenth, they're talking about drag racing. It has absolutely nothing to do with drag racing. The mantra within our team on every single thing that we do is we say the last tenth is, if you get an A in school, it's a 90%. In the real world, 90% is completely forgettable. Kind of like the example that Mike gave. We need to go to 11. We need to go way above that on certain things, not everything, but on certain things. And that's what's going to make it work. So we said, okay, on this exhaust system, we don't want to have a couple speakers in the car piping in some fake sound. We said we need to, number one, come up with a sound that is new, fresh, and modern. We can't make a V8 sound That would be wrong. That would be like calling an electric car, a traditional ICE engine. Not that that's not been done, but we didn't want to have that sound. We wanted to have something new, fresh, modern, something very much in the electrical space, which is quite frankly why we call it the Banshee, because it's got that screaming wail of a Banshee. But we need to tie it back to heritage. So when you listen to the car, by the way, the sound's not done. I mean, we're still working on the sound. We've got plenty of time to keep tuning it and tweaking it. But one of the things that was critical to us was to tie back some kind of an emotional connection to today's car. So when you listen to the car, when you hear the high-pitched scream, it's very polarizing on purpose. And we're still working on that part. But when it settles back down to idle and you feel the idle, there's a bass track in that idle. And that bass track is literally the firing order of a Hemi V8. So you'll never notice it. You'll never know why, but there'll be something there almost subliminal that says, I'm okay with this. I'm comfortable with this. And then wham, the wide open throttle scream of it. You're like, oh, wow, what was that? That to us was one of the key things that we needed to do. And we said to everyone working on it, we said, think of the first time you ever went into a cathedral and heard a pipe organ. Your brain saw the organ, it saw the pipes, and it heard the sound. And whether you knew it or not, your brain made the connection. That's what it is. It's the air coming out of those pipes that is making me have this emotional feeling, this connection to that sound, as opposed to just some simulated sound, which is exactly what we did on this car. We created an algorithm that takes all the inputs of an ICE engine today, moves air through an actual speaker system, a box with chambers, plenums, pipes, and an exhaust outlet that comes out the back of the car. Air coming out the back of the car was important because the spatial difference between sitting in the car and hearing some sound coming at you and sitting in the car and air coming out the back of the car from outside the car is like the first time you ever heard surround sound. You're like, where's the jet plane coming from? I don't get it. It then just works and makes sense. That's why when people hear the sound of the car on their computer, they're just hearing it out of a little speaker coming at them. They have not experienced it yet. Mike has heard it in person. When you hear it in person, it's totally different. You hear it out in the wild. So when we revealed the car, we drove it out into the crowd and people said, that's crazy. That's a hand-built prototype car. What are you doing? I said, I need to prove to everybody that I'm not showing you a live stream of some audio that we pumped through the speakers in this building. No, it's driving through the crowd out in the parking lot and the people are looking at it going, where's the sound coming from? And if you watch the video, people actually put their hand down by the exhaust outlet to feel air coming out. They're like, how's that happening? Nobody gets in a car, hears a speaker and puts their hand on it and goes, huh? What is it? There's exhaust coming out of it. No.
Tim, I think what you guys have done is
that
brilliant.
last detail. It's that Tim.
Oh, yeah. Who, and you've just answered a bunch of questions that our viewers have sent in. They wanted a lot more detail on it. But my question is, who came up with the idea of having that underlying baseline that you're talking about following the firing order of the Hemi? I think that's brilliant. How'd you guys come up with that?
Is a group of really smart people that beyond being smart are huge enthusiasts. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is we looked at what was going on in the industry with sounds. And we worked with some of the people that work on big blockbuster movies for sounds. And the easy go-to button with everybody that we talked to was to simulate a V8. And we said that's absolutely 180 degrees different than what we want to do. That would be the worst thing we could ever do. We don't want to do that, but we want to have a connection to it. And the connection to it just became that bass track.
So you talked about tuning that sound and how that's still an ongoing process. One of the key things that it seems like your customers love is the ability to tune their vehicles, personalize them their way. And that includes with the sound profile. Do you imagine that you're going to kind of leave an open door for people to personalize their sounds?
TBD, but we will have different sound profiles because we're going to have, if you think about it today, you got a Pentastar, you got a 5.7, you got a 6.4, you got a Hellcat, you got a Red Eye, you got a Demon. Each one of them has a different sound profile. We're going to have 9 different power levels on this car, 3 directly from us, and then another 2 on each of those, so a total of 9, and the extra 6 will be from direct connection. Each one of those will have a slightly different sound profile. The guy that buys the X kilowatts, wants a different sound than the guy, I'm being careful not to say the kilowatts, that buys the other amount of Banshee kilowatts, the 400 volt, the 800 volt, all those differences that we got to get used to talking about. Whereas today we talk about 5764, 62 supercharged. We say those things very easily. Today we got to get used to kilowatts.
So what are some of the performance aspects of the Charger Daytona that you believe will just be so attractive that people will not be able to stay away from it?
I think to us, the transmission was absolutely critical. To this car, because it's not going to make the car any faster. And all of the engineers are very, very quick to point out to me that it's not making the car any faster. Although I disagree with them, which I do on a regular basis, because we have some other things that are coming along in the life cycle that I think will take advantage of that and actually will make it faster, but TBD on that. But it's that feeling of the shifting that I think is going to be something that people aren't, once they get used to driving electric cars, this is going to be totally different for them. I believe that's going to be critical.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest things. I know, like, for guys like me, it's who, review EVs and stuff like that. It's most are very boring. So as an enthusiast, I'm looking for something to redefine what the electric car can be, right? Something that I can look at and that I can relate to, that still excites me. And it's not, I'm just getting into the car and running in silence, right? I want something to redefine how my brain views an electric car. Like I said, if I can ignore it, I have no desire to own it. I have no desire to drive it, because that means everybody else can ignore it. And if you look at what people buy now, right? Nobody's going out and nobody's buying a Ferrari to be ignored. Nobody's buying a Hellcat to be ignored. Nobody's buying this to be, these are not subtle people, right? These are people that have a personality. And as we all know, what we drive is our personality in somewhat of a reality, right? We come out and people see it's Musto's car, it's Tim's car, it's Chris's car. The car has to be able to do that for the end user as an EV. And if it doesn't do that, it's not going to make it. It'll make it with people who don't really care about that. But I think for the diehard petrol heads like myself and others, that's what it has to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that goes back to the first question of, can we actually make this work? Doing that, we have a little bit of an advantage here. You can't do that if you're trying to be somebody that's appealing to everybody. You can't do that, because you're going to really turn off too many people. If you think about the positioning of the brand for the last decade and where we're still going to stay going forward, is we say, number one, we don't buy market share. We don't. We try to cultivate mind share. And I know that sounds like some marketing mumbo jumbo, but it's actually what we believe. We believe if we can get into your mind on what we are and what we do and how we do it, the rest of it just comes along for the ride. We literally say we want 95% of the population to ignore us. And we want 5% to revel in what we do and get excited about what we do. If we do that, we win. Now, if that's your positioning, you can do things like exhaust systems and 2-speed transmissions and R-wings and some of the crazy things that we're talking about doing. You can't if you're trying to be mainstream. You just can't do it. Doesn't mean that they don't have the technological capability to do it. Absolutely, of course they do, but they're trying to be something different than what we are.
So we've been seeing already the transition to full electric in another segment that kind of tugs on a lot of the same emotional characteristics, and that's the full-size truck segment, with things like the Hummer EV and the Lightning. How much are you looking at the adoption of electrification? Who's going to buy vehicles like that, and kind of putting it into the framework of the muscle car and thinking, well, maybe people are accepting this more than we thought, so we've got a real shot at this?
Yeah, there's 3 different areas for electrification, right? There's the mainstream commodity buyers that I just need a nice car to get me from A to B, and I don't really know or care what engine's in it, whatever. electrification for them, as long as the charging network and all that will be in place, they're probably the easier version. The two harder ones are exactly what you pointed out. Somebody with a use case, a needs use case like a truck, that's tougher, and then muscle cars. I would say that muscle car actually is a little bit easier than truck, right? Because truck, you have a hard time with aero. I mean, save for the Cybertruck, but aero is a lot more challenging on a truck than it is, at least with the way that we've accomplished it on the Charger. So you've got that, and then also the use case. If you look at the use case of a truck, you're going to have towing, you're going to have higher ranges, longer range needs. If you look at the use case of a muscle car, a Challenger Red Eye today has a range of 170 miles. Yeah, okay, sure, you just got gas stations you can fill up easier, but nobody buys a Red Eye today and asks what the fuel economy is. Nobody. So for that customer, if my battery, if my range is 50, 80, 100 miles less than some other mainstream car, so what? If I deliver on the performance, it's okay. So yeah, we're looking at what they're doing in the truck space, and I got to say that the first electrified trucks, well done, well done. I've driven them. I've driven the Lightning. It's a well done product.
Biggest thing about the truck, though, at least the way I see it, like I still got to be able to tow with it. So for like, if we can make a truck, if people make a truck that I could still get my range, get my towing capacity, that's what I'm sold. I still got to tow stuff everywhere. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's why I say the truck is actually a harder nut to crack than the muscle car. Because in the muscle car, and I said this when we revealed the car, and people always think that I was joking. I wasn't joking. Cars are dead. I mean, nowadays when you drive around and you see a car, it literally turns your head because you're not used to seeing cars anymore. I mean, everything is a 2-box design, right? Everything. So when you see a 3-box, you're like, whoa, hey, I mean, even if it's something boring, it catches your eye, right? Because it's unusual. So when we did this, we said, okay, why does everybody want utility vehicles? You guys know this is super obvious. They want them because they have a higher seating position, more command of the road. They want all-weather capability, not off-road capability, but all-weather capability, and they want more utility. They like the airspace behind them for going to Costco or whatever. Those are the 3 reasons that they buy those cars. And we said, okay, I can't give them command of the road because I'm not going to take a UV and say it's a muscle car, so we're not going to give them that. But what I'm going to give them as a trade-off, I'm going to say, look, I'm not going to give you command of the road, but I'm going to give you presence of the road. I'm going to give you a really badass design. I think I'll break even on that one. Utility, I'm not going to give you 2-box, but I'm kind of going to give you 2-box because when we were working on the Aero, one of the big enablers to the Aero was to have that really aggressive back of the car, which lended itself perfectly to a hatch. So once we were in the hatch space, we said, wait a minute, if we're going to go hatch, we can put huge utility into this car. When you open that massive hatch that goes all the way up to the roof glass and then fold the seats flat, the concept car had 4 buckets. The production car won't. The production car will have a 60-40 split. So when you fold that down, you're literally going to have this massive flat floor in the back of that car with a lift gate. You're literally going to get UV capability in that thing. And then every one of them is going to be all-wheel drive. So I didn't overcome the command of the road, but I gave you the presence of the road. I did somewhat overcome the utility, and I did overcome the all-weather capability because now I'm going to give you better performance than a Hellcat and be able to drive it in the Midwest all year long. So, okay, I'm liking the odds there.
So why did you go car and not say Durango? Make it a SRT E Durango.
We wanted to lead with this. That doesn't mean that we don't have future products in the plan coming later, but we wanted to lead with this. If you look at what we do in our marketing, it's really no secret. Half of the cars that I sell in the muscle car space are Penastars. Half of them. But you never see me talk about them. All I ever talk about is Demons, Hellcats, Red Eyes, stuff like that. The biggest, most aspirational stuff, because we say, and that's why we make our cars all look the same, which a lot of people disagree with. Why does a $90,000 car look very similar to a $40,000 car? Probably a bad idea. No, not for us, because whatever power level your budget allows, I want you to feel like you're part of that same club, part of what we call the brotherhood. It's not marketing. We want everybody to feel that way. Whichever one you can afford to get into that club, we want you in. So we wanted to lead with that car. And that's why we showed the Banshee first, by the way.
Yeah,
We could have shown you the one that said, hey, this one's going to be at this price point in this range. Who cares? I want to show you the crazy one.
Hey, look, we got to take a quick commercial break. We got a million more questions to ask you. This is fascinating. But first, a shout out to our sponsors.
How do Bridgestone tires stop shorter on what roads? It's their HydroTrack technology. But you don't have to know how the science works, just where the brake is. What really matters is their Bridgestone.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry.
All right, we're back. Hey, Tim, and the rest of you guys, indulge me a minute here. We asked our viewers to send in a bunch of questions, and Tim, I got about a half a dozen or so. Let's go rapid fire with these real quick, and then we'll get back to the other guys' questions. Don Sherman, who you probably know, wants to know, will the venerable Hemi adornment end up on any of these electric vehicles?
As in putting the name on it?
Yeah.
No, my God.
Okay, Jonathan Brown says, hey, you've got this cool sound. Would you consider a jet turbine sound?
There's something in there with that. There's a little bit of that in there.
Magnus Auto wants to know, how much money, R&D money, did you put into that sound system? You know,
no,
for the
I'll never too much.
Frank Bohannon wants to know. He says he applauds all that. He pretty much said the same thing. He says it doesn't have to sound like an ICE engine. So you already answered that one. PJG wants to know, what are you going to do? I mean, you know, we're right now, 2022, these EVs, we've reported they're going to not show up until early 2025. How are you going to bridge the gap here?
I saw that article, and I thought it was kind of funny because I launched a concept car, not a production car, and I didn't say when it was coming. And yet somehow already my concept car is late. I don't know how that works, but
so how, let's see, Manojna Belur wants to know, what about customization? How much customization are you going to allow on this?
Stay tuned for SEMA this year. We're going to show a different version of this car at SEMA because we know that is absolutely critical to our buyer. 50% of them modify their cars today. So at SEMA, we're going to show you a different flavor of this, different look, feel to this car. And we're also going to talk about how and why we launched direct connection well in advance on ICE so that we could transition to electrification with direct connection, because people are going to want to modify their cars regardless of what's, pushing them.
Robert Ratliff said he and his wife went to a muscle car thing. They asked a bunch of people what they thought about electric. He said about 25% of them said they would go electric, which is actually a higher number than I thought. What's your reaction?
That's great. I don't know where that was, but we actually did some research ourselves. And it's funny because Dodge doesn't do a lot of research because we're usually not wanting a mainstream opinion of what we're doing. But we did do research on this car after the fact, quite frankly. And what the research came back with was, number one, if you look at the general market of all of the buyers in the industry, about a third of them right now today, about a third of them are willing to consider their next purchase to be an electric vehicle. And then when I take that and I take a subset of the muscle car buyers, it's almost exactly like what he said. It's about 25% said on my next purchase, I'm willing to consider it. Doesn't mean I'm going to buy it, but I'm willing to consider it if you can deliver something that's interesting and exciting to me. Now, where it gets really interesting is when I then take the subset of that whole industry and I look at just millennials. When I look at just millennials, about half of them are willing to look at an electrified product as their next purchase. It's not surprising, right? The younger generation is more open to electrification and things like that. So when I look at that, I say, okay, 25% of the muscle car intenders are willing to go into that space. Okay. At first thought, you're like, that's a little scary. When we did Speed Week, we said, we could take this car to CES. We could take this car and launch it at CES, and that's a very friendly environment. Those are, people that are looking at the future. They're looking at electrification. They're probably going to be excited about this, the direction that we're going. We said that would be a really bad idea for us to have 2 years of development time and to work on problems. So we said, let's go into the lion's den. Let's launch this car on Woodward Avenue during Dream Cruise, and let's invite enthusiast clubs, people that own the cars today, to this event, and then let's live stream it to all of those enthusiasts at the same time. Now we're going to get real feedback. Now we're going to find out how they feel. And what we saw was scary, very, very scary. Our positive sentiment within the community today is well into the 90s, of the enthusiasts like what we do. Doesn't mean they own our product, but they appreciate what we do in that space. When we said these cars are going away, it's going to be the last call and we're going to move to electrification, it dropped into about the 60 range. That's I don't even know what to compare that to. I mean, that is Armageddon. That is disaster. Like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What did we get ourselves into? But it was by design. And that's why when we made the announcements, we said, okay, day one, we're going to talk about all the stuff we're going to give you on the cars that you love today. Day two, we're going to talk about the transition. And then day three, we're going to show you the future. So day one, when we said the cars are going away, sentiment crashed. I mean, it was like 1929, the stock market, the run on the bank, muscle cars dead. I hate Dodge. The next day, it didn't get much better because we launched a Hornet and people misunderstood. And they said, wait a minute, that's like a Mach-E. The Hornet's going to replace the Charger and Challenger? This doesn't work. But then the people who understood it said, wait a minute, that's actually really cool. And the Hornet started to gain a little momentum. Then we got into Wednesday and we said, okay, here's the car. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it's going to drive like. Here's what it's going to sound like. And the sentiment came back up again. It doesn't mean that we're back up to where we were. It doesn't mean that all these people are going to buy these cars, but it does mean you hated the idea. But then when we explained to you how we're going to do it, you came back around and said, okay, you got my attention. I'll follow along until this car comes into market and I'm going to look at it now, which made us feel really, really good about it.
Okay, one more quick one then. Jacob Whittington says, hey, would you ever consider like a two-door pickup version of your electric, sort of like the Utes that they got down, the high-performance Utes they've got in Australia?
Yeah, they would. Inside the company, we have all these different brands, and each brand has its own P&L, and each run as a separate business unit. So we compete with each other, just like we compete with the outside world for resources and things like that. So I'd have a real fight on my hands if I tried to bring a pickup truck to market, because then Cobalt would want to bring a muscle car to market, and next thing you know, if you don't have brand separation, if you don't have purity of what your brand is about, you're just going to end up competing internally and externally on price. And we want to have our own space. That's why we got rid of some of the cars that we had that didn't fit the brand. People said it was crazy. Hey, you're going to drop a lot of volume. Yeah, we dropped a lot of volume, but it's okay.
Tim,
So
I want to get back
in
to
regards-
the people. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, in regards to that competition within the brands, I got to believe that some of the technologies, these sort of purposeful character building imperfections, the two-speed transmission and the sound, the exhaust generator, might have a home in Ram products or other parts of the Stellantis empire. Will you be willing to share technology like that?
Well, the biggest thing and one of the most important things to do is share the initial investment, the platform investment. And that's why when we had our investor day, Carlos Tavares talked about platform sharing. And you guys all know this is built on the Stella Large platform. The Stella Large platform is going to underpin a lot of cars. So there will be the ability to share some things across the lines. Doesn't mean they will. Doesn't mean, everybody's very quick to point out to me. They're like, hey, this is on Stella Large, right? Yes. Well, Stella Large, we know is a multi-energy platform. So you can put ICE technology in the Stella Large platform. Yes. Well, then you can put it in this car. Yes. We build cars. We could do that. Doesn't mean we're going to. Just because you can doesn't mean we're going to. That's where it gets tricky, right? Where do you keep your boundaries, your brand separations, and your go-to-market strategy?
So Tim, I wanted to get back to when you were talking about the demographics, the millennials and so on. So who is in the brotherhood?
This shocks most people. When they think about muscle cars, they think that it is an older white male. In reality, the Dodge brand has the youngest demo in the entire industry. Bar none. Youngest demo in the industry. And within our portfolio, the youngest demo is the Charger, not the Challenger. A lot of people seem to think that the younger generation is going to go for the two-door. No, they actually like the four-door better. So the younger demo goes on the Charger. But the funny thing about demos is when you say that, you go, wow, that's a big wow factor, right? Youngest demo in the industry. Okay, it's 51 years old. Because when you're in an industry of 40 brands and 300 nameplates, I mean, it gets really tight. So you say, I got bragging rights. I'm 52 years old. I'm the youngest in the industry. Well, number 14 could be 56. I mean, so it gets tight. So we make a very important point to say, I don't care about demos. I don't care who you are. I care how you think. We spend all our time talking about psychographics, not demographics, because your psychographic of a 28-year-old could be the same as the psychographic of a 60-year-old. I don't care what your demo is. I care how you think and how you want to live your life. And about 40% of the industry across all segments is a cohort of people called all-in inactive. All-in inactive is a buzzword for people that say, I want something that represents me. I want something that I can be involved in and be part of and represents my life to the outside world. And it doesn't matter what segment it is, those people exist, and those are the people that we attract to, quote, the brotherhood.
So let's talk about your other car that you've got there. I mean, I've been really impressed, Tim, what you've done with the Dodge brand, because you really haven't had all new product in I don't know how long. And you guys have done a terrific job of marketing them. So this Hornet, it's got to be a real help in addition to having your electric Charger and Challenger.
Yeah, it's you're right. We haven't had new products in quite a while. I mean, we have done some mid-cycle actions on some of the cars. Interiors, a little bit of sheet metal on Charger, and really no sheet metal on Challenger. We've worked on the Durango a little bit, but essentially, you're right. The cars are unchanged for 15 years, but we've been trying to make very continuous, deliberate enhancements to these cars every single year. And I make the joke all the time. Look, if I went to our fans, if I went to the people that love Dodge and I said, hey, for next year, I can invest a bunch of money and give you this new entertainment that gives you these 6 new apps, or I give you another 100 horsepower, which do you want? It's a no-brainer. They're taking the 100 horsepower all day long. So we kept catering to exactly that. And in 2013, we had a very important decision point. In 2013, we're getting ready for our investor day of 2014. And we had to make a decision where we were going to go with the platforms. And at that time, you remember within FCA, we had the Giulia platform, and we had to decide, are we going to go and move the Charger and Challenger onto the Giulia platform, the Giorgio platform? And on the Giorgio platform, we would have ended up with a car that, quite frankly, would have been lighter, would have handled better. It would have done a lot of the things that people said that we were kind of laggards to the competition on. But we looked at it and we said, we can do that, but if we do that, we're going to go and compete head on with the Mustang and the Camaro. And quite frankly, those are great cars. They're fantastic cars. Why would we want to go fight with them in their sandbox? Let's stay in our sandbox and be totally different from them and go left when they're going right and try to own this space. Hornet is going to be the same thing. When we looked at Hornet, we had the opportunity to share with the upcoming Tonale. And if you don't like the idea, you're quick to point out, well, this is badge engineering, isn't it? Well, no, I'd rather call it brand engineering. If I can take something that is already really cool and fit it into the brand and give it the brand DNA, give it the look, give it the driving dynamics, give it the steering, give it the suspension, give it the exhaust, give it the power, and give it the ability for customization, which is key to this brand, then I can make this thing fit into this space. And I was joking when we unveiled the car, this might be a disaster because we're going into a segment that's not asking for any of these things, none of them. if you look at why they buy compact UVs, it's very much a spreadsheet segment. It's price, value, fuel economy. None of the things that we're bringing to market are being asked for. None of them. But go back to what I said about demographics. 40% of the industry is this all in an active mindset. So when you're in a segment that's 1.5 million units, how many of those people have that mindset? How many of them want something like this, but it just wasn't available before? Well, we're about to find out. Hopefully it's a good number.
It's interesting what you're saying about, you guys looked at putting Charger and Challenger on the Giorgio platform. And then Sergio, when he was still around, said, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to, do new versions on the existing platform. And in fact, I was told by a designer in town here that he even saw them, that you guys had fully redesigned the Charger and Challenger that were supposed to come out like a year or even 2 years ago. That never happened. Why?
Well, we worked on it because there was huge advantages to it. I mean, we had access to a phenomenal platform that would have given us, that great handling, the lighter.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the Giorgio platform. So yeah, I think you guys discovered it was too
on
small.
the L cars, on the L cars.
Right. And then Sergio said, we're going to keep the same Charger and Challenger platform. In fact, he said it's going to knock your socks off when you see what this thing looks like. And I've been waiting for the new versions to come, but obviously there was some change of heart and you guys decided to keep the old platform and the old ones, and you've done a pretty good job with it. But what was the decision process to say, no, even though the new ones are designed, we're not going to go forward with them?
So there was two paths, right? There was the Giorgio path that we walked away from because it wasn't going to give us a separation from the competition. So that one was a very easy decision for us. Why spend a bunch of money just to go compete head on? Bad idea. At least we believed it was a bad idea. And then the second one was invest a lot of money into the L-Car platform to change that. But I always make the example back to the Wrangler. The Wrangler has been changed many, many, many times, but yet it doesn't deviate from its silhouette. So we had the Charger and we had the Challenger. It's really tough. I mean, it's really tough to change the silhouette of the Challenger and come up with something better. So yeah, we made some tweaks. We went from a 70 to a 71 and we changed some hoods and we changed some wheels and we did the wide body. We did those things, but to actually change the silhouette of the car, we would have been spending money just for the sake of spending money. We wouldn't have ended up with something better. Now, we did do it on the Charger because we had a little more leeway on the Charger, still staying in the same silhouette, but changing the sheet metal in 2014 as the 2015 model year. If you look at the 2014 and the 2015, they actually are quite a bit different. If you put them next to each other, the 15 looks significantly lighter, significantly small. It's not, but it looks, tighter, smaller, more athletic than the other one because we had a little more latitude on that one than we did on the Challenger. So they were more evolutionary than revolutionary, to your point. We did have one that was very revolutionary that we actually showed to dealers, and we didn't end up moving forward with it because it was going to be, again, money for, just for the sake of spending money. It wasn't going to move the needle.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing about EVs and the move to, over-the-air updatable architectures is you can kind of create surprise and delight as you go along, and you can make it easier to make running changes and all that. How does that fit into both, the muscle car vernacular and also into products like the Hornet? How does that change help you keep the romance going?
Yeah, it's actually fantastic because you can do things with that you could never do with ICE. We can offer, I can offer a track day feature. I can offer a feature that says, hey, you want to buy it for the weekend. And then if you like it for the weekend while you're at the track, you can then pay more and keep it, things like that. One of the important things, though, is if you got to think about that in advance, because for us, the most important thing is not some app. The most important thing for us is going to be performance. And even though you can do more performance with electrification with some updates, you still have to have hardware, right? You still have to have suspension, you still have to have brakes, you still have the tires. And that's why we said, hey, we're going to launch 3 different trim levels, but 2 power levels up on each of those trim levels is going to be available through direct connection. The reason that we did that and didn't say, hey, it's 1 power level and you can buy 8 more is because you need the hardware. So you buy the first car and we're going to give you the hardware that we're not going to let you outrun your suspension, your wheels, your tires, your brakes, and still step up. And then the next one, you're not going to be able to outrun your wheels, tires, brakes, and then the next one, the next one. So we're going to bake that capability in. If you buy the car and you never upgrade it, did you overpay a little bit? Yeah, maybe a little bit. You got a little more brake, a little more suspension, a little more tire than maybe needed, but it's a muscle car. It's fine.
Tim, do you see this as a possibility of expanding the number of people that are interested in Dodge?
You know, we'll see. I hope so, because I know not all of them are going to come along. It's just human nature. There's going to be some people that are going to say, no matter what you do, no matter what transmission, no matter what exhaust system you do, I'm an ICE guy. I'm always going to be an ICE guy. I'm going to buy used ICEs till the day I die. I'm never coming along. We will lose some people, no question. But I've also heard from people, you know, I have this super high-tech secure email. That's my name. So I get a lot of instant feedback from customers when we do things. And I've gotten a lot of emails from people that literally say, look, I've always respected what Dodge does because you're going your own path, but I was never going to buy one of your cars. It just wasn't for me. But I'm super interested in this car. So I do think that we'll lose some and hopefully gain some, and we'll get to where we need to be. I don't want to lose any. That's why we're trying to do what we're doing, but it's inevitable. Change will lose some people.
Mike, what do you think? You know, do you think that electric muscle cars are going to attract people who were not into muscle cars in the first place when it was ICE? And the reason I ask that is, you know, when you look at what Ford, for example, is claiming on the F-150 Lightning, it's like 75% of the people that are buying that thing have never been in a pickup truck before. They're attracted to it because it's electric. Do you think that could happen with the muscle cars?
Yeah, I think one, you know, it's all about re-education as far as I'm concerned, right? It's about introducing a new kind of EV to an audience that never might have considered an EV and having them look at an EV in an entirely different way, right? As we all talked about, every EV looks like it was stamped out of the same jelly bean mold for the last 10 years, and they're boring as all hell. So if you see something and all of a sudden it's more attractive, people will start talking about it, people will start looking at it, and it redefines what your kind of mind thinks of electric cars, then yes, people are going to get more excited about it. The guys that are out there that say, I'm never going to buy an ICE, or I'm never going to buy an EV, I'm never going to buy an EV, and all that garbage. Let me tell you something. Everybody comes out and they say, I can't believe what they did. They left their customers in the dark. People seem to think that OEMs have a choice, right? Technology has evolved, and the government comes back and says, you have to do this. You can't make ICE for that much longer. We know this, but they rebel. So how do you combat that rebellion? Well, you give them something that caters to their internal emotions, right? So by Dodge doing this, I think that's going to be the switch that triggers that. And again, people are going to start looking at EVs in a different way because of this car. And that's what I'm excited about as a muscle car guy. And listen, I posted up the, you know, the EV when it first came out, and you should have seen the EV. You're a traitor, you dumb son of a bitch. I can't believe you did this. You're a muscle car guy. What are you doing? And it's like, guys, just take a step back and understand that this is coming. You're not going to stop it. So as opposed to just putting up every barrier that you can, educate yourself a little bit. Look at what they're trying to do to make it more attractive to you and everybody else in the world. That's going to attract guys that are my age, guys that are older. It's going to attract their kids, their grandkids. That's what we all want. As long as the soul of the muscle car is there, we'll be fine. But that's the key. The soul has to be there.
John, we've seen this before. A smaller example, but we've seen this before. And I've used this example before. When the industry was switching to fuel injection, you had the same pushback. No, I'm not doing it. This is Big Brother. This is for emissions. I don't want anything to do with this. I'm keeping my carburetor till I die, right? And then in 1985, you had a manufacturer came out with the perfect car that this buyer wanted. smaller car, manual transmission, front engine, rear drive, V8, Holley 4-barrel carburetor. Thank God you built the dream car. Great car. The next year, that same exact car, unchanged, switched to fuel injection. The car significantly outperformed the carburetor. Significantly. Overnight, their attitude changed. I want that one.
That's right. If you want performance, I mean, you're going to go with whatever is fastest.
Well, I think a lot of it
So
is the nice part is all the other companies that launched EV, they were the baby steps, right? They were the beta for the entire auto industry to say, well, now we know exactly what people don't want, right? Which is great, because then, you know, others could come in and say, okay, well, let's just wait. Let's just wait a little while, see what the consumer wants, get their feedback, interject it into the product that we want. And I think that's what we needed.
So Tim, you said candidly that there will be certain people that simply won't come along for the ride toward electrification, which I completely agree with. Will you continue to service those customers in the sense that, like, will you expand direct connection offerings, Mopar stuff, to, you know, try and keep those audiences slaked for a longer period of time, or is it all going to taper toward EV?
Hold that thought for SEMA. We got some stuff that we're launching at SEMA specifically to what you pointed out for direct connection. But if you look at the adoption rate of electrification, we know where it is today. What's the number? 5%. 5% of the industry wants electrification today, or is buying electrification today. Some of that is because of some of the inherent, you know, problems with charging infrastructure, availability of products that are interesting to them, things like that. But it's still at 5%. 5% of the United States is also a vegetarian. It's a small percentage, right? And you got to get to whatever the number is that somebody happens to be quoting that day. Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Is it 50%? Where do we got to get? But if you look at the IHS numbers of where the industry is going to go, and IHS is looking at the supplier investments. So they see the technology that's being invested in that's going to ultimately become the cars that are available for sale. So they got kind of a leading edge advantage of where the industry is going. And by 2030, they say that the industry is still going to be 35% ICE. It's going to be basically a third full electric, a third ICE, and in the middle is going to be some combination of ICE with some form of electrification. So it still will be there for a little while. The question is going to be, how right are they? How right or how wrong are they? And that's going to come back to two things. It's going to come back to the administration and figuring out the infrastructure. And probably even more so than that, it's going to come down to the manufacturers delivering a better product. You know, horses went away because cars were better. Electrification will take over for ICE when electrification is better. And it's a more compelling proposition. You cannot buy mass adoption. You can buy some people with tax incentives and things like that. The only thing that will get us to those rates is a better, more compelling product. And that's on us.
That's right. You know, we're at the top of the hour here, or very close. I think that's the perfect note to end up the show on there, Tim, that you just made. So thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I know how busy you are, so, you know, your time is precious for us.
Thank you for having me on, John. This was great.
Mike and Chris, great having you guys. And Gary, we'll keep on doing this too.
Okay. See you next week.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
If you like this program and would like to learn more about the automotive industry, check out our website at autoline.tv or look for us on YouTube on the Autoline channel.